Good evening. I'm Roderick Hawkins, and it's my pleasure to guest host, filling in for Darius Hillman. About my guest, she's an activist, an advocate, a bridge builder, a Southern belle, and a boss. After building a stellar reputation in Chicago and across the state of Illinois, earlier this year, she became the Chief Executive Officer of Brave Space Alliance, a Black-led, transgender-led, LGBTQ+ center on Chicago's South Side. She's a daughter of the South, Louisiana to be exact. But she's been charting a brave, bold, and beautiful path in the Midwest for decades. As a Black trans woman dedicated to public service, she's often found herself as the first or only woman like her in the room. But her leadership and mentoring of others is ensuring that she won't be the last. Please join me and Channyn Lynne Parker in the arena right now.
Here we go!
Channyn, I am so happy about this opportunity to speak with you. We've known each other for a long time now, but I'm glad we get to be in dialogue in this space. Most of our conversations are over cocktails or over brunches, but now we get to share this conversation with the CAN TV audience.
We do.
So how are you, first of all?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing good. There's so much going on, so much we want to talk about and try to cover in our time together. But let's start at the beginning.
Yes.
So let us know, where were you born?
Where was I born? My origin story is Louisiana.
Yes.
Baton Rouge, Louisiana. My family, we are from Baton Rouge.
Mm-hmm.
My mother is from a little town called Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of history.
Mm-hmm.
I am so deeply proud of my family's legacy.
Yeah.
In various ways, so yes.
And full disclosure for the audience members, we both had that hometown in common.
Yes, we do.
We are both, I would say, Southern girls. We're both Baton Rouge babes.
Yes.
Who made a life in Chicago.
Yes.
Before we jump to Chicago, tell me, what was life like? I know what life like for me, but this is your story. Mm-hmm. I'd like to know what life was like for you growing up in Baton Rouge. I know you didn't say that long, but let's talk about that though. What was it like for you?
You know, to be honest with you, uneventful. Mm-hmm. I really consider growing up in Chicago to be mostly my youth, you know?
Okay.
I think that I had a really uneventful childhood, but I think that's a good uneventful.
Yeah.
You know, it really is. So it was regular.
And when did you all move to the Chicago area?
Oh my God.
You were?
Oh goodness, I was in my pre-teens, late, maybe 11, 12-ish, somewhere there about.
Okay, but the origin story is in Louisiana.
Yes.
And you brought your gumbo recipe with you, though. So let's talk about this gumbo, because I have not had the gumbo yet, but I know you are famous for cooking some Louisiana gumbo, because there's a difference, folks need to know that.
There is a big difference, absolutely, yes. So I hear that I make a very good gumbo. I do not like to brag on myself.
Right.
So I'll let other folks decide that.
Okay, so origin story, Baton Rouge, mom from Philadelphia, Mississippi. I've been to Philadelphia, Mississippi. Yes, I have. Because you know, since growing up in churches, you go all over the place. But coming to Chicago area, so where did the family settle when you moved up here?
The southern suburbs of Chicago.
Okay, and what was life like then? Because I want to talk about then you're growing up, the preteen years, all that.
Once again, rather uneventful. And I think that the reason why it's important for me to highlight uneventful is because for a person like myself, we are always looking for some form of trauma, for some cataclysmic event.
Yes.
And I am proud to say I've had none.
That's wonderful.
So that's why, for me, uneventful is eventful.
Right.
Because my childhood was
regular.
Christmas presents and birthday parties, same phone number all my life.
Yes.
Right.
It was what it was.
Yes.
It was what it was. And it worked for you.
And that's why I always struggle when we talk about the origin pieces, because for so many folks within our community, there's always, again, like I still use the language cataclysmic, but no, it was just swimming lessons and
it was life.
Yeah.
It was life.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the people that were influences in your life. You mentioned, and we're going to come back to the uneventfulness and how that contributes to the woman you are today. I think that's important.
I think that's lovely.
And I appreciate how you shared that. Not every person of a story, not every individual who has a journey went through this traumatic experience. That just like all of us who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, we're not a monolith. We have everybody has a different journey to where they are, to their authentic, living their authentic lives. So we're going to get to that. But who were the folks who were whom had a heavy influence on you growing up?
My goodness. I guess from a more immediate space, my mother. You know, I always say that my mother is my greatest advocate, my greatest champion. I grew up in a very diverse family, one that is deeply proud of their legacy and heritage. For me to have a traditional Southern Black family, if you will, my mother always prided herself on raising open-minded children. My mother always said to me, you know, I grew up a sharecropper's daughter, but I wanted my children to be cultured. I wanted my children to have expansive knowledge. I wanted my children to appreciate arts and life around them. And that we did.
What a blessing.
That we did.
That's fantastic. You made me think about my mother, who had a similar upbringing and was very clear about the expectations she had for her children that she raised too.
That's right.
Your mother, who's some other mentors that were influential?
Who are some other mentors? So mentors who I've never obviously met before. Toni Morrison is a great influence of mine. She gave me my love of words. She gave me my love of reading, my love of language, the fact that language and words are to be used responsibly, or they're not to be used at all.
Oh, yes.
You know, those are the things that were instilled in me through my relationship, if you will, with her.
Yes.
You know, I remember when she passed.
Yes.
I remember setting out my book, Love, by her, and a candle. And I remember saying, I hope your passing was as sweet as cream, like baby Suggs. So yes.
Okay, that's a whole nother show we should be doing about your love for Toni Morrison. I'm curious though, what was the first Toni Morrison novel?
The Bluest Eye.
Oh, I thought that might have been, because I think I recall in our conversation, you quoted some lines talking about Pecola Breedlove.
Absolutely, yes.
And that doll.
Yes, Pecola and all of them.
So who introduced you to Toni Morrison? How did you and Toni Morrison meet, if you will?
Great question, and I don't know if well, you know what, then again, I do think I remember. I was in the high school library, and I came across this book with a very, what I felt was a provocative title, The Bluest Eye. And I said, what is this? And I just remember picking it up, and I remember Nuns Go By Quiet as Lust. And I said, wow. I was like, that's beautiful. And I remember reading it. And my mother is also an avid reader. My mother's one tragic flaw is that she is not a Toni Morrison fan. My mother, my mother is a very get to the point type of reader. And she is just like, oh my God, her writing is just so flowery. But she also said, well, I understand where you got your language and your syntax from and all those things. So
we talked about your family, the childhood, moving from Louisiana up to up south, as some people call it, up south,
exactly what Chicago is.
And we talked about people in your life, but let's talk about, you know, you've got this great family. You've got this, I would say, people debate this term, but would say normal upbringing, right?
Very much so.
The word you use even just sort of, you know, it was regular. But, you know, you at a certain point, you knew you had to live an authentic life.
Absolutely.
And when did you know that, okay, I need to live fully me, and I need to take some steps to make that happen?
Yes, that is a wonderful question. So, in short, I always knew that I was me, but what me was still undefined, if that makes sense. Right? So, living in a binary society, what I did know consciously was that the social cues that boys are given, I did not align with, and the social cues that girls were aligned with, I more so felt at home with. So for me, that was kind of the beginning of being able to identify feeling more like that as opposed to this. And my parents said that they recognized it before I did. However, the thing is that they did not discourage or encourage it. They just simply said, well, this is interesting, we'll see where this goes. You know, that's it. So I had a father who, as most children do, loves to wrap towels on their heads and sheets and pretend like it's hair. You know, what kids don't do that, right? So I would sit on his bar stool and play Rapunzel, and I would let down my hair, and he would pretend to climb up it.
Oh my
so
goodness.
you know, so those are the things that I grew up with. I grew up with, you know, having parents who respected my love of colors, who respected my love of teddy bears and softness and things like that. They respected the fact that I loved to run and actually did not mind catching a baseball either, right? So they just let me be.
They let you be.
They let me be.
And that is a story
that was the amazing thing.
Amazing, remarkable,
Yes.
and something that should be shared often, because I think there are probably many more stories like that, but sometimes we get, especially those of us who are living in the who are cisgender or you know, it's presenting one way, we want to look for this, as you said, this tragic story, but it needs to be told. More stories like yours. All the stories should be told, but definitely stories like yours where you have parents who just said, let's just see what the end's going to be.
Basically, I think as a kid, I created more traumas with people than they did with me. Oh, I was an obnoxious child.
Really now?
Oh,
Tell us more about that, Channyn. What was
I was a brat. I was just an obnoxious child. When people would say things like, what would you say to your 15-year-old self? I'm like, I don't know. She was an asshole. Like, I don't know. You know, like, be nice.
Right, be nice, sir. Don't be the mean girl. But yeah,
right?
That probably had its advantages sometimes too. But
possibly.
But that was then. That was then.
Yeah.
Right. And based on the fact that your parents were very just like, let this child be.
That's it.
When it came to making your transition, I'm assuming that path continued, right?
Yes, it did.
That's
yes, it
wonderful.
did.
That's wonderful.
Absolutely. You know, my mother once said to me, she said, I named you because you didn't have the voice to name yourself, obviously. She said, but now that you have your own voice, it's for you to tell the world what your name is. So though that has always been my marching orders, is for individuals to have the platform to tell the world who in fact they are and what they are. So again, for me, that is the foundation upon which all things have been built, is having that story where my parents recognized, as Khalil Gibran said, I came through them, I'm not of them. And that's it.
Yes. That's beautiful, Channyn. And I see that when I encounter you, when we first met at a I know it was a gala years, probably years ago. And before I knew you, I thought, that lady there is someone I should know. She's someone special. Because when you do walk into the room, you take up space in such a bold way. So tell us more about how you show up.
How do I show up? I always said, whenever I transition from this plane of existence, I want to be remembered by being graceful. And when I think about graceful, I don't necessarily equate graceful with movement, as much folks do. I equate graceful with a state of being. A state of recognizing that every individual in this room is deserving of humanity. That every individual in this room is God-breathed, God-called, and has a mission to fulfill and complete. And that we are here to add value to each other, and to not do so ultimately diminishes the value that you carry yourself. So that is what I bring into each room. And as Maya Angelou said, walk into the room as if you've got 10,000 ancestors ushering you into it.
Come on, you better preach. You better preach up in
That is how I enter the rooms. I enter the rooms recognizing that I have a host of individuals who bought and paid for my ability to stand here or sit here right now. So that's how I enter into rooms.
And you do it well, my
Thank
sister.
you.
You do it so well. I want to pass a collection plate now for that sermon, but my goodness. walking through these rooms, we know that we're in this time and space where there are so many let's just say people who don't want us around. And who are doing things, especially when it comes to trans folks, and especially our black trans siblings, black women in particular, that are just evil. I'm just going to call it what it is. How do you maintain your peace when you know you're also in the space when you talk about, we're going to talk about the work now, when you're having to be on the front lines to combat against these things?
I think I may channel my 15-year-old self that my presence bothers you much more than yours bothers me.
Come on now. Come on now. Yeah.
Yeah. That I'm deserving of this space.
Yes.
And you're not required to celebrate me. No one's required to celebrate you.
Yes.
You know? But with your free will, you have the ability to stay or leave. You know, and that's it. Right? I'm not a big advocate for understanding. The reason why I said it is because it's impossible for you to understand me. Like it's impossible for me to understand you because I'm not Roderick and Roderick isn't Channyn. But however, just because you don't understand doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to accept my existence. And hopefully through that acceptance, you may have a curiosity to better acknowledge or gain even possibly an understanding of who I am, why I am, and maybe even find common ground.
Correct.
You know? Correct. So that's how I look at that. Yes, there are folks who would rather see individuals like myself or you or other LGBTQ folks watching eradicated.
Yes. That's true.
That's not going to happen.
I agree.
Try as you may.
Come on.
That's not going to happen.
That's right.
And you may create uncomfortable circumstances for us, which may set us back, but there just are too many of us to ever be eliminated. So you take one of us out and 10 more will come.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Channyn, this is so wonderful. I want to talk about the work you're doing now. Now, as we're in the time we've got, you've had a variety of jobs in your career. You worked in Cook County Correctional Space. You've worked in other not-for-profits. You worked with youth. You've worked with adults. But you were also, as I want to hear about the world's oldest shampoo girl.
I was a shampoo girl.
Yes.
So for those of you who don't know what a shampoo girl is, shampoo girl is an assistant to the hairstylist. Yes. To be honest with you, I don't think I knew it then, but it was actually one of my best jobs.
Come on.
Reason why was because it taught me how to be nimble. It taught me how to serve. It taught me how to approach with humility. It taught me that as soon as you believe that you've mastered something, in fact you have not, because there's always going to be a new requirement for you. So yes, I spent a great deal of time at the behest of master hairstylists. And at a shampoo bowl.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So and from there, the other things happen. But the career, walk us through briefly, because in that time we've got left. The quick path, it wasn't a quick path, but the jobs you've had, so people understand all that you've done and all the places you've been in.
Oh my goodness! So I began my career at the University of Chicago. Working with young people who were actually born HIV positive, right? That was a really rewarding and oftentimes humbling, job, because when we think about individuals who are impacted or living with HIV, we think about individuals who are able to pinpoint an occurrence where this happened, whereas a young person who was called perinatally infected, they're not able to pinpoint it, right? So oftentimes for them it feels a bit unreal. From there, I went on to work at Chicago House Social Service Agency, where again I did case management, and I went on to work at a project called the Trans Life Project. It was a project that centered the lives of trans women of color who were experiencing various levels of marginalization, in particular homelessness. After that, I went on to work at the Broadway Youth Center, right? I worked at the Cook County Jail, as you mentioned, doing a lot of support groups for returning citizens. Oh my goodness. Howard Brown Health, where I took on executive leadership function.
Yes, that's right.
Heading their external relations department.
Yes.
To end up at Brave Space Alliance as CEO.
The CEO. And for those who don't know, Brave Space Alliance is?
Brave Space Alliance is a Black-led LGBTQ plus organization that centers the lives of marginalized individuals, particularly on the south side of Chicago, through essential needs services. We have 5 pillars of dignity, as I like to say.
Yes.
Dignity in housing, dignity in food, dignity in health, dignity in identity, and in the saddest instance, dignity in death.
Absolutely.
We center trans-identified folks because when we think about the most marginalized of our community, they are the most marginalized, but we see everybody. We see everyone in our community. That's why we are LGBTQ plus.
Absolutely. And now you came, and there's no secret for those who are aware that you came to Brave Space Alliance as CEO after serving on the board. I believe you're the chair of the board, right?
I was, yes.
And there was some controversy, there was some challenges, but you've taken it on now.
Yes.
Why did you take it on, and what is your hope for the future of Brave Space Alliance?
I took on Brave Space Alliance because they are essential services. Oftentimes you'll hear language like basic needs. I don't think that there's anything basic about providing people with access to food, access to clothing, access to housing, access to health. So I call them essential.
Yes.
And Brave Space Alliance is an organization that found itself in a very critical moment not so long ago. And I knew that I was well positioned community-wise, experience-wise, to create sustainability for the organization so it can remain for years to come, right? So that's why I took the seat of Brave Space Alliance to make sure that it's stable for the individuals who depend on its services.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So from the champagne, from the shampoo bowl,
The champagne bowl too.
the champagne bowl
Listen,
too, the champagne bowl, the shampoo bowl to
room.
the C-suite, to the CEO suite. How can people be connected to Brave Space Alliance?
Sure. So they can be connected to Brave Space Alliance in its most simplest ways through online, right? You can go to our website, bravespacealliance.org. You know, you can read more about us. You can come see us in person at 1515 East 52nd Place. We would love for you to stop by. You can send me an email, which I'll pass out. You know, towards the end of it to connect with me individually. So yes, there's various ways to connect with us.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you're in that space. I'm so glad you're doing so much work. Your advice, let's say there's a young person who's watching this, an older person, a person who is watching this program, who is part of the community but is sort of in their space, they don't feel safe being out, they don't feel comfortable being out. What would be your advice to them?
So as the title Brave Space says, right, we reject the notion that there is a such thing as a safe space. Every day requires you to essentially be brave. We may feel when we lock our doors at night and cut on our alarms and lock our car doors or carry whatever weaponry we do that we are somehow safe. When in fact, if somebody wants you bad enough, I guess they could get you. We see an ever-changing climate in our society where things are becoming very volatile, and we have to walk around brave. We have to choose to navigate this world with a certain level of bravery. My advice to all individuals, no matter their walk, is be brave. You know, there's a quote, and I can't remember who exactly said it, but it says to protect yourself from sadness is to protect yourself from happiness. And yes, you can wall yourself in, praying and hoping that you somehow are able to inoculate yourself from all of the societal harms, but think about all the other harm that you're doing to yourself in doing that. So all we can ask you, all that I can say to you in terms of my advice is be brave.
Absolutely. Be brave. Channyn Lynne Parker, this has been amazing. Thank you for joining me in the arena tonight.
Of course.
And reminding us all to be brave. We'll be right back with 3 for the Road.
What's going on, Chicago? I'm Darius Caffey, and I invite you to join me for a new episode of The Table on Air with our very special guest, diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner, Donald Gilliam.
It doesn't just take one person. I said that everybody can win. That's the whole purpose of what we want to do.
Join the conversation with us on Tuesday, October 3rd at 7:30 p.m. on CAN-TV Cable, Channel 19, streaming on cantv.org, and available on the CAN-TV Plus app. Experience the power in community television.
Now, this segment is called Three for the Road, Channyn. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and you will give me 3 answers, and we're going to keep it moving. So here's 3 for the road. Number 1, if you could have dinner with any person, living or dead, who would you choose and why?
Oh, easy, I guess. So, my short answer, I want to say Toni Morrison.
I thought you might want to say that, but that's okay.
I'm going to say more personally, my great-grandfather, Sanford Alexander.
Talk about that. Talk about Sanford
My
Alexander.
great-grandfather was born in South Carolina in 1820 on a plantation where he and his sister Rebecca were sold to Louisiana, which is how we got there. He actually lived to be 106. And he died in 1921, which is why when people say, how is your great-great-grandfather? Because he lived to be very old. Yeah, so a man who lived 40 years after freedom, he lived for 40 years after emancipation.
Yes.
I would love, I'm just very curious as to hear from him what his life was and is and all of those things.
My gosh.
Yes.
That's one hell of an answer. Born into bondage, sold further down south, freed, and Reconstruction. Oh, yeah, yes. I want to be at that dinner too. I'm just saying.
Yes.
Next question. Do you have any regrets?
No.
I knew you were going to say that. Why?
No.
Why bother?
Because if you were able to, if you altered one thing, it would alter the path of your life. Difficult situations aren't wrong situations. They're difficult.
Come on now.
I don't think trigonometry is wrong. It's maybe difficult depending on who's the student, but no, it's not wrong. It's just difficult.
No regrets. There's a song for that. Edith Piaf, I believe.
Yes, it
but
is.
I know the Shirley Bassey version. We'll talk to that later. Final one. One piece of advice present-day Channyn Lynne Parker would have given to 21-year-old Channyn Lynne Parker, not 15-year-old. We know that girl was a mess. But 21-year-old, what piece of advice she would give?
Be brave.
Yes.
Be brave would be my advice I would give to her as well. And I would also let her know. I think I would more so give her reassurance. I think I would let her know you're going to be pleasantly surprised with what you become to this world and to yourself, And I think, should a 21-year-old who's watching right now come across this archive when they're 45, I hope you look back at yourself and you recognize that you are pleasantly surprised at what you became.
Yes. And I think there's so much more to come as well.
Absolutely.
Channyn Lynne Parker, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation tonight and being in the arena with us. This has been great. I can't thank you enough. And thank you, Chicago and beyond, for tuning in. Let me leave you with a final thought for the road, courtesy of Audre Lorde. When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. Until next time, take good care of you and each other. Good night.